Hi, welcome to Thursday Night Live with Aish New York. We have a really, really special presentation for you tonight with an amazing individual who I will introduce momentarily. I just wanted to start out by saying, let me just move my screen a little bit there. Yeah, there's a little better. I just wanted to start out by saying that Aish New York is having our annual gala on October 28th. If we can put the image up for the gala, we want to invite everyone viewing tonight to join us. Our keynote speaker will be U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. We are honoring Elizabeth and William Kahana. We'll have entertainment from Nissan Black and an amazing illusionist. It's going to be at a really great program, and you can register and buy tickets at aishnygala.com. That's AISHNYGALA.com, aishnygala.com. So please join us for our gala if you possibly can. Okay, and getting right down to business. Here's how I'd like to introduce our guest. Really, I've watched a few videos on him and spoken to him a bit. Just an extraordinary individual. Craig Dietz, despite being born without libs, is continuously seeking out new opportunities to challenge himself. He is currently a licensed attorney and in his spare time enjoys bowling, skiing, playing volleyball, hunting, fishing, jamming on his drums, or tooling around the country in his van. Craig's swimming accomplishments include the 4.4-mile Great Chesapeake Bay swim, the Midmar Mile swim in South Africa, and a 1.5-mile escape from Alcatraz swim. Craig currently resides in Harrisburg, PA with his wife, Christy, and their dog, Rocco. And there's also an amazing new addition to the family, which we'll hear about during the program. And all of these accomplishments, Craig has managed without limbs. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Craig Dietz, a motivational speaker and attorney. There we are. How are you?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a great pleasure. And I'm looking forward to the conversation immensely.
As am I.
So first things first, can you speak a little bit about your medical condition, how long you've had it, and just how you would describe the challenges?
I mean, you pretty much covered the medical condition when you say born without limbs. There's really not a whole lot more to say than that. The medical term is phocomelia, but that's just Latin for without limbs. It's not really. It just it's always been explained to me as just a genetic fluke. It's just that I was born essentially with short stubs for my arms and short stubs for my legs. That's really about all there is.
How rare is the condition?
I have several Facebook friends with the same condition. Not that I seek people out. We're not like a group or anything, but it's probably not as rare as you think, but not that common either.
Right. So what are I know I mentioned some of them, but what are some of the hobbies and accomplishments that you think might surprise people?
Well, as my best friend from high school used to like to say, the only thing I can't do is hula hoop and jump rope. But one of the hobbies, one of the things you talk about that impresses people, I guess, or most surprises people, I have to talk about the only thing that's ever actually, I think, impressed my mom, and that is watching me play drums with my buddy's wedding where I grew up in my hometown. And I jammed with him and his uncle and some friends, and it was actually the first time my mom had ever actually seen me jam on a drum set, because I had always been at my friend's house or at the school or wherever, and she had never. I mean, she'd been to concerts, but it's not the same. I'm hitting one snare drum and with the big band. This is me back on a full trap set with one drum and one stick and one leg. And it's funny. I tell people when they ask me if I'm any good drummer, my stock response is that I'm probably 1,000 times better than you think I am. than you would expect. But I'm no John Bonham. I'm no Neil Peart. I'm not. I'm certainly not going to blow any roof off any place.
Right. Amazing. Um, can you talk a little bit? I heard you talk a little bit about it in your TED Talk. What high school was like for you?
High school was I pretty rural town in St. Mary in Pennsylvania called St. Mary's, Pennsylvania. It's about 5 or 10,000 people. It's not a real big town, and so it was. Everybody knew me, so I never really felt that different in my town. And
Uh-huh.
in high school, everybody. I wish I could say I never encountered a bully or never was made fun of or anything like that in high school, but that's not really reality. That's not the world we live in. But I never, it never, um, it never really, I never let it affect me. It never ruled me. I would just move on to the next people. I just wouldn't hang out, would kind of avoid that person. And honestly, it only happened like once or twice that I can really remember in high school. Otherwise, I had a great high school experience. I bowled in league every Saturday with some of my buddies. I hung out. Yeah, there we go. That's my game face. um, so yeah, I mean, I feel like I had a pretty, relatively speaking, a pretty normal high school experience.
Right. One of the pictures that we brought up was of you on the tricycle.
Yeah,
That tricycle has a great story behind it. Would you share that with us?
yeah. My dad built that for me. I'm sure I know you'll probably have some more questions about my family as we move on, as I always talk a lot about my family. But my
Go
dad,
ahead. Go ahead. Talk about him now.
well, my dad built that. My family was really, instrumental in me being how I am, because they never, they understood that I had some special needs and they may need to do something for me here or there, but they never babied me and they never coddled me. They would encourage me to do things on my own. They wouldn't do things for me. They would help me figure out how to do things on my own if I was having trouble, rather than doing it for me. And my dad, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, as I said, we lived in a rural neighborhood. And my dad noticed that, we had a lot of kids in the neighborhood and I was kind of stuck in our front yard. I couldn't go cruise around the neighborhood. The kids had to come to me, and they wouldn't always do that. So my dad got this grabbed the garbage man one day as he was driving by and said, "Hey, if anyone's thrown away a tricycle, bring it to me. I want it." So he got one out of the junkyard and ripped it apart and built what you can pop it up here again. Built that little Fred Flintstone trike for me. You can see I used my foot to propel it. He got the steering. He bent the handlebars so it came back around my chest and under my arms, so I could twist left or right to steer it, and I just kicked it with my leg. Back then I wore those little leather moccasins. I wore through those in about a set of those in about a month with that bike.
Wow. You still have that bike?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, actually,
I had a feeling.
Yeah, oh yeah, you don't throw that away. It's still. My cousin actually has it right now, because I don't know if it'll ever happen, but we're working on kind of maybe building one, a model that I could ride now. But he has 2 kids and I have a 6-month-old, so I'm not sure. We don't have a lot of time to spend on those silly projects right now. But yeah, that's not something you get rid of.
You mentioned your family like never coddled you, or never they always encouraged you to be as independent as possible. Did you ever find that frustrating?
Oh yeah. I hesitate to tell this story because it cannot sound great, but when I was a freshman in high school, we had a pool in my school, and we had to take swim class. And I love to swim. We'll talk a lot more about that later. I've always loved to swim. So I wanted to take swim class, but I would have had to undress myself and dress myself in the locker room by myself. And I had not gotten to the point where I was able to do that yet. So I locked myself in the bathroom one night, literally locked myself in the bathroom with my tools, my stick and my tools. And I did not come out of the bathroom till I put my underwear on myself. And I came out and I showed my mom, look, I put my underwear on. And she looked at me and said, they're crooked.
Wow.
But that's mom, and
Right.
it's not like she was some, never satisfied with stuff like that. She always,
Right.
gave me kudos for jobs well done, but she
She wasn't.
also
She
was
wasn't. She wasn't shocked that you accomplished it.
right, right, right. I
Right.
mean,
Which.
her mindset when she brought me home from the hospital as a baby was that she was not going to spend the rest of her life taking care of me. I was gonna be able to take care of myself. I was gonna get an education. I was gonna be able to look after my own needs, and that was her goal for me. Goal for me from day one. And my dad and my siblings kind of followed suit with that, but she was really the driving force behind that from day one.
You tell a great story about the college that you chose after high school and why you chose it. Would you share that with us?
um, yeah, I youth is a hell of a thing, right? I mean, I never wanted my disability to rule me when I was growing up. I never wanted it to define me, and I went to extremes at times to not have it define me. And college was kind of one of those. There was a school in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, that back then. Now I graduated high school in '92, which was before the days of the ADA. So back then, not all the colleges were fully equipped for kids in wheelchairs and disabilities, and Edinburgh was well known throughout as being pretty much the best and only university in the state of Pennsylvania that was fully equipped to handle kids in wheelchairs. And that's where my guidance counselor and my parents were pushing me to go because of that. I wouldn't have it though. I wouldn't have any of it. I went to visit Duquesne University in Pittsburgh when I was a junior in high school, and I just immediately just fell in love with the university and with the city of Pittsburgh. Duquesne is kind of tucked away on a little hillside on the corner of downtown Pittsburgh. You're kind of in your own little world, but you have access out your back door to downtown Pittsburgh, and so I just loved it. I mean, growing up in a small little town, I always, I had stars in my eyes. I always wanted I wanted to experience the city. So yeah, so I had to kind of, fight a little bit and say, this is where I want to go. And, mom and dad, she always, it was kind of, she created the monster. So she kind of had to let me
Yeah,
feed it,
I was gonna say it's kind of a remarkable combination because the story also that I remember from one of your talks is how in school they insisted that you have helpers following you around.
Well, that was high school. Yeah.
And that you fought that
Yeah.
fiercely.
That was when I was all through middle school and elementary school. I had student aides that would come in and help me with whatever I needed help with in class. And the schools I went to in elementary, middle school weren't fully handicap accessible. There were stairs, and there was these old metal ramp lifts that went up down the stairs, and so I would need her to operate that for me and stuff like that. So high school though was fully ramped. I didn't have any issues getting anywhere I needed to go, and so I wanted to do high school on my own. And the principal met with me and my parents a few weeks before my freshman year, and he kind of talked me into having the student aides with me during class because he said he was afraid I wouldn't be able to keep up with note taking. And it took some talking, and I was like, well, I don't know. But he said, well, let's just, give it a try. But he looked me in the eye, and he said, they won't be anywhere near you in between class. In between classes, you'll be completely on your own. Just help you in class. So I humored him and my parents. I said, sure, okay. So a month into my freshman year, notes weren't an issue. I wasn't having any trouble in class. But in between class, the aides were following me. They were never more than 5 feet behind me. They were shadowing me everywhere I go. And so finally one day I got a little annoyed, and I confronted one of them and was like, what the heck are you doing? You're supposed to be leaving me alone in between class. And she replied to me that said, and this was a lady that had literally been with me since first grade. Like, we knew each other really well, and we liked each other. She was a really neat lady. And she looked me, she never BS'd me, you know, so she looked me back in the eye and she said, well, the principal has given me very strict instructions that I'm to never leave you out of my sight. He was afraid he didn't think I could handle myself. He was afraid I was going to get hurt and sue the school and all that. But so
Right,
he was
right.
kind of, but he didn't have the guts to talk to me directly about it. He kind of went behind my back and played me, and Mrs. Fedorko was her name. She was a really sweet lady, and you know, he was playing us against each other. So I had to. It was a situation where I've always kind of believed that, you know, situations like that are what we make of them. That we can either let them control us or we can do what we can to take control. So you know, after finishing the conversation with her, I thanked her for being honest with me, and I took myself straight to the office and had a chat with the principal about what I can and can't do. And of course, you know, that chat was followed up that evening by the principal calling my mom and talking to her. But mom backed me up and said, you know, if he thinks he can handle it, if he's doing all right, you ought to give him a shot to do it. So yeah, it took a little fighting by both me and my mom, but after about a month or two into my freshman year, we ditched the student aids, and that issue was never raised with me again.
You know, you've told like 3 stories, you know. One is of you, like, you know, locking yourself in the bathroom to teach yourself so that you could dress yourself. Another story is this one that you just told about high school, you know, really determined to be more independent, and I don't want the extra help. I don't want the people around me. You also, you know, you chose your college based on your dreams and aspirations, you know, not based on what would be most comfortable for you. I also remember the story that you told about when you took the LSATs,
The bar exam.
the bar exam, that you refused any special consideration for the bar exam and passed it on the first try. I know you're a motivational speaker. I have a tough question for you. How do you relate to people who aren't as motivated as you? I mean, you're an extraordinarily ambitious guy.
Yeah, but
It's a tough question, I know, but I
right. You know, I mean, I don't. Everybody does what they have to do in life. I mean, I encourage people, and yeah, I'm a motivational speaker. I speak at high schools, and that's what I tell people. You know, is don't let challenges that we all have challenges. You know, I don't have arms and legs, yeah, but that doesn't mean I've got more challenges than the guy next door who has arms and legs. We all have crap that drags us down. And so my thing is always, you know, get on top of your stuff, you know, control your situations, control your circumstances. And so, you know, it is a challenge for me sometimes when I'm around somebody who lets these silly little challenges keep them from doing what they want to do. I just kind of roll my eyes and I'll, you know, but if just simply being around me and watching me do what I do is not enough for them to get over that sometimes, then I don't think anything I can say is gonna.
That's so well said.
And it's
Right.
not for me. It's not for me to judge. You know, I mean, if they're happy in their life, then good for them.
How much of your, this is not an easy question either, but how much of your determination do you think is nurture, and how much is just your nature?
Oh boy, the old nature versus nurture question. That's a tough question. I'm going to take the coward answer. I'm going to take the easy answer and say 50-50.
Uh-huh.
Because you know, because I don't want to shortchange my parents. You know, because you know my mom's been kicking me in the butt since I was, you know, 5 years old, 4 years old, and so, you know, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be who I was if she hadn't been kicking me in the butt for as long as I remember. You know, I don't know.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, I am a very self-motivated individual as well, and so I don't like to give her 100%. You know, give my family for kicking me in the butt 100% credit, because I think, you know, I think at some point I would have stretched out. I would have broke out on my own. It's funny because my father's mother, my grandmother on my father's side, it was always her instinct to just coddle me and just do everything for me. And she actually told my mom one time, like, she gave my mom credit and said, you know, gosh, if Craig was my son, he would have never left the house, and so
Right.
who knows what if I had been. I think eventually I would have broken out of the house, but um, so we'll play it safe and say 50-50 nature versus nurture.
Okay, fair enough. And you know, you say that you've hunted also, and amazing. How do you hunt? I mean, I don't mean to ask questions that are just like morbidly curious, but
Right.
I can't help it because it's explain it to us.
Right. It's hard sometimes, with when I go to schools and I speak with the kids and stuff. It's hard not to turn it into 50 minutes of how does Craig do stuff, because that's what everybody wants to know.
Okay,
So
so we won't have 50 minutes, but we could have 5 minutes.
right. So yeah, the hunting. Again, I grew up and a picture is really worth 1,000 words here, because I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, like I said, and hunting was back then. Hunting, everybody hunted, and so when I turned 12, my buddies were all going to be hunting, and so I told my dad that I wanted to go hunting too. And so my dad, we put the bike up earlier that my dad built. My dad missed his calling as an engineer. He was an electrician for 30 years, but he missed his calling as an engineer because he had a beautiful mind that way. He could build stuff and he could look at something and figure out how it works or figure out how to make it work.
Right.
So when I told him when I was 12 years old, Dad, I want to hunt, he he took a month or two and gave it some thought, and he came up with that rig. And actually it was kind of a work in process over many years. What we first started out with the gun. You can see the gun mounted on a tripod. What you see there is one of my dressing sticks, wired into the trigger housing, the green ball on my shoulder. We stole my mom's turkey baster and pulled the rubber squeeze thing off the end of the turkey baster and put it on the end there. We came up with that. He came up with that first. We didn't have that cool stool at the beginning. We just had me in the woods sitting on a bench with the gun mounted in front of me. But when we were out one year, deer came behind me, and I was on this bench, and I had no way to turn the gun around. The deer was literally 20 yards behind me looking at me, and I had no way to turn the gun. So Dad came up with this. He got an old rotating bar stool, and you can see underneath the seat, he got a big wooden disc, and he mounted that disc underneath there. And you can see I got my legs all socked up to stay warm there. But I just reached down with my foot with a big sock there, and I grabbed that wooden disc, and I can use that wooden disc to spin the seat all the way around in a circle.
Wow, the 360, yeah. Amazing. So, yeah.
And I actually, about 10 years ago, I out hunting with my dad. I actually got shot an 8-point buck, and it was another situation where the deer came from behind us, and it started running sideways. It was actually a doe that came behind us, and she started running sideways, and there was a buck chasing her behind her, and so I was able to get my chair spun around fast enough and get a shot and actually get the 8-point. And being out with my dad, it was a really, really fun,
wow.
really fun, neat experience.
Well, I can imagine that. Okay, so you were featured years ago on ESPN for your swimming. Can you talk a little bit about how your swimming started and your accomplishments in swimming?
Yes. Swimming, I've always just had a love of water since I was as long as I can remember. I've always just loved being in the water, whether it be just the kiddie pool in the backyard, or where there was a lake near where we lived, and so we go jump in there. Just from as long as I can remember, I just always loved being in the water. When I was little, though, swimming for me basically consisted of putting a life jacket on, jumping in the water, and being Bob, just bobbing around. But throughout the years, one year when I was vacationing with my family at a state park with a lake, I was splashing around on the beach, and a lifeguard approached me and asked me if I'd ever considered using a scuba fin for swimming. And he was a scuba guy, and he had a fin in his car, and he went and got it for me, and I shoved my leg stub into the foothold of the fin, and man, it just it gave me so much more push to the water. So I've been swimming with those fins ever since, and just I've experimented with different fins over the years, and eventually I shed my life jacket and discovered I'm actually quite buoyant without it. I think it's not having arms and legs. I actually stay afloat pretty well without life jacket, and I always, after I got out of law school, I joined a gym and started swimming laps in the pool just to stay in shape a little bit, and always thought about wanting to do a endurance swim. I always loved open water. I always loved swimming in lakes when I was a kid and stuff. And one year when I was living in Pittsburgh, it just was kind of feeling out of shape, and I hadn't been in the pool that much. And a couple of my buddies, a couple of my coworkers in Pittsburgh were doing a Pittsburgh triathlon on a relay team. One person does a swim, one does a bike, and one does a run. And something just kind of clicked in me, and I was like, man, that sounds like fun. So I got a couple buddies. I got a friend of mine to do the bike and a friend to do the run, and I said, let's do this Pittsburgh Tri. It was a 1,500 meter swim in the Allegheny River. 1,500 meters is just shy of a mile. And at the time we decided to do that swim, I actually hadn't been in the pool in a year. I had been kind of lazy. I hadn't swum a single lap. So my goal for that, there's me and Jim and Ned at that first swim. So I had a month to train for that swim for a mile in the river.
Wow.
And I did the best. I trained hard for a month, and my goal was pretty much to finish at that point. And it was an amazing swim because it's you get in. I'm a Pittsburgh boy. I grew up, I love Pittsburgh, and it was just an incredible swim because you get in the river between Heinz Field and PNC Park, and you swim up the river about 500 meters to PNC Park, and then you turn around and you swim downstream and you get out of the river at Heinz Field. And so it was just an amazing swim. And even though I did it on a whim, I finished that first swim in about 40 minutes, and I finished ahead of more than, I think, 35 or 40 able-bodied swimmers. I finished faster than, which kind of blew my mind. Like when I got out of the water and I looked back and I saw people still in the water, I was like, wow, it was pretty cool. And it was such an adrenaline rush that I got hooked on it. I got hooked on doing the triathlons and the swimming, and there's me coming out of the water and my wife Christy there to help get my fin and everything. So I'm an adrenaline junkie more than anything, and so I love the rush, and I don't know if adrenaline junkie is the right word, but I continually have to push myself, and so doing the mile swim. I did the Pittsburgh Tri many times after that for several years, and I got my time down to 29 minutes in that same swim, finishing ahead of more than like half the field. But a mile isn't good enough for me, so I start wondering if I can, go a little further and swim harder. And so I've started spreading out. I did 2 mile swims, and then I did some half Ironman swims, which are 1.2, and just kept pushing and did I think in 2012 I did my first Great Chesapeake Bay swim, which is 4.5 miles across the Chesapeake Bay. You swim between the spans of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge.
How long did that take you?
I think that was me actually coming out of the bay. I think that was me coming out of the bay swim. It was hilarious because you swim 4.5 miles, and this picture doesn't show it, but you swim 4.5 miles and you come out of the water, and there's like a 20-yard hill that you have to climb. That's like a 45-degree incline. It's insane.
And how long does that 4.4 mile swim take? How long did that take you?
That took me. I did it twice. The first year I didn't finish. I was in the water for 3 hours. I had half a mile to go about, and the sky grew dark. And I learned a valuable lesson in prayer that day, because I swim on my back, and I'm on my back staring at the sun, noonday sun, praying for cloud cover for 3 hours, praying for some cloud cover. I got my cloud cover in the form of lightning clouds. So there was a lightning strike on the other side of the bay, and so they pulled everybody out of the water when I still had about a half mile to go. So
wow!
So I tried it. I was like, it was a learning experience. Everything for me is learning experience. And I took the lessons I learned that year and trained. I actually met some guys at that swim that are in my town of Harrisburg that they swim several nights a week, and I started swimming and training with them. And I trained harder than I ever had for anything that next year. And I went back to the bay, and I finished the full 4.5 miles that year in just a shade under 3 hours.
Wow. Wow. And are you still swimming?
Yeah, yeah. I haven't been, obviously, with the pandemic. I haven't been in a pool for a while, but can't wait till we get all this stuff behind us and I can get back to doing what I do. But yeah, I think that shot he just showed was my Alcatraz finish. Yeah, that was me coming out of the water in Alcatraz in the San Francisco Bay after the Alcatraz swim.
Right.
Yeah, I've done the longest I've done now. I've done a couple of 10K swims, which is 6 miles. That's the longest I've done, and probably the longest I will do. It just it takes over your life. Just training for stuff like that, training for that just kind of takes over your life. And now, with my son,
Oh, let's talk about that. So I said we were going to talk about you having a new addition. So let's talk about your son.
Yeah, my wife and I adopted a baby boy in April. He was born on April 13th, which actually is my birthday as well.
Wow.
And so we brought him home on April 20th, and when he was a week old, and he's been with us. He's just turned 6 months old. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Amazing. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about how fatherhood is affecting you?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's been great. It's I learn something about him, and I learn something about myself new every day. It's fun just learning as he gets older. Things I can do with him, to move him around, and to work on changing diapers and stuff like that. It's I look at it like anything else I've done. It's a challenge every day, and just watching him grow, watching literally he does something new every day, and it's amazing.
Would you say that you I want to ask you a more philosophical question.
Okay.
Do you do you Can you talk a little bit about what your personal perspective is on life's, what you think life's purpose is, if you think life has a purpose, and what you think that purpose is?
Oh, geez, I thought you were going to ask me hard questions tonight.
Well, your determination and your perspective on life is so remarkable that I wonder if we could take the camera out a little bit. Do you feel like that reflects, something bigger or broader that you see that life's about?
Man, it's something we all think about. Obviously, I honestly don't know if it's something we're meant to understand in this life. I kind of feel like the minute I figure out what life's purpose is, that that's it for me. That's when I get hit by a bus or struck by lightning, or I kind of feel like game over at that point once you figure it out. I think that's kind of I think the purpose of life is figuring out the purpose of life. I think if you force me to answer, though, I've always been partial to Jack Palance's character Curly in City Slickers.
Uh-huh.
I've always loved his explanation of the meaning of life is it's all about one thing. You find the one thing that is most important to you in life, and you devote your life to that.
So do you have something that you think, if you found is one of the most important things to you?
Yeah, and that was the other part of Curly's wisdom, is that it was that one thing is obviously unique to every person. It's something you have to figure out for yourself, and
Right.
I mean, for me, I think the one thing has kind of changed a bit over the years. But I think if there is one overriding theme, I think it's kind of been for me to just kind of make the most of my life every day, and leave leave a good example for the people around me. And now, now to leave a good example for my son, to make the most of my life every day, and to leave that example for my son and the people around me.
Right. So I wanted to ask you also this year with COVID, right, has been very, very difficult for a lot of people. And a lot of people are facing challenges that they never thought they'd have to face. Um, some of the students that I study with through AISH, have businesses that are doing worse than they've ever done. People have lost loved ones. People are very insecure about the future.
It's not a great time to be a motivational speaker right now either. There's not a lot of events to be speaking at right now.
Right, that's also true. Right. So for people who are really feeling discouraged and out of it and down, like what would you feel like you'd want to say to them?
I go back to my my overriding message that I always talk about is just not being defined by the circumstances that you're in. We're not going to let this pandemic define us. We're not going to. It's a moment in time. This too shall pass. We're not going to let this moment in time define us for the future forever. And my life has always been about whatever the situation is, finding a way to take control of it. And with the pandemic, it hasn't been any different. I mean, you talk about how just COVID and the pandemic. On top of that, we've had an infant in the house since April. So we've been dealing with an infant without with it being challenging to just run to the store and get what you need on a daily basis. So, but we haven't let it define us. I have a really good friend that lives in town, and when I found out that we were getting the baby, I called him and I said, I need you to be my store running guy for the next month or so. If we need something at 2:00 in the morning for the baby, I'm calling you, because I can't run out to the store. I do everything with my mouth, and that was April when we didn't really know that much about this stuff. So, so I can't run out to the store and be grabbing stuff with my mouth and everything. So I think my message. I think I'm getting a little long-winded here, but my message is
Yeah, talk. Yeah, I mean, I think hearing what you have to say on this could be very important for people. So take your time.
Yeah, I think it's what it always is. I think it's let's not let this define us. I mean, for me and my wife, Christy, it has hindered us a bit because we don't, we've been smart and we listen to the scientists and we listen, to the CDC, and we don't do anything that they say not to do because, as I said, with an infant in the house, if she or I get sick and one of us is down for 10 days being sick, it makes life a lot more challenging for us with the baby in the house. So we've been careful and we haven't gone out a whole lot, but we take a couple walks a day. We have a beautiful park in our neighborhood and we have a walking trail around our housing development. So, we get out of the house twice a day. We take the walk, we take the dog for a walk, we take the baby. We haven't let it define us. There's a old 50 style drive-in restaurant 30 miles outside of Harrisburg. We've been to that about a half a dozen times. Just you stay in the car and they bring the food to you, and so it's safer that way. And so we find ways to maintain our sanity and not let it control us completely.
Let me ask you another personal question, if I could. We agreed before that you're not an easy guy to offend, so this one won't offend you, I don't think, at all. But has there been a time that you could talk about when you wanted to give up? When you really did feel sort of defeated and that you had to, that you could talk about?
I'm not a negative guy. I don't like to dwell on that stuff, but that's not to say I've never been there. I think, anyone who says they've never been there is lying. So I won't sit here and lie to you either. But
we appreciate that.
my my freshman year at Duquesne was challenging. You know, as I said, I grew up in a very small town where everybody knew me and no one gave a crap. You know, everybody accepted me for what I was, and no one really was affected by me. Really, you know, they just pretty much knew who I was, so when I went to Duquesne, it was quite different. You know, it was the Duquesne. There was, you know, Duquesne's campus. There was more people on Duquesne's campus, I think, than there were in my hometown. So, and everybody was like, "Holy crap, guy with no arms and legs," you know, and everybody reacts to me differently, so it was suddenly it was an awakening for me. It was me suddenly realizing, "Holy crap, I am different than everybody else," you know, and it was there were a lot of ups and downs my freshman year, but I just, you know, I kind of tended to surround myself with people who kind of were able to look beyond the disability and accept me for who I was and hang out with me. And you know, the people that were just couldn't get past the disability, I just kind of, you know, let them go by the wayside, and I just fought through it. You know, it was an emotional. I mean, whose freshman year in college isn't an emotional roller coaster? You know.
Yeah, but that's a very interesting, and it's a specific challenge that you're talking about, you know, going from that warmth of a small town, you know, where, like you said, like most people would, you know, for every one guy who saw you for the first time, you had three people who knew you, and you know what I mean? To
Right.
go in a situation where you're much more on your own, I imagine that, I mean, that's probably super challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, it was
but like you said, it's gonna be hard to have you dwell on something that's super challenging.
right. And you know, and I mean, even, you know, now that I've gotten older, I'm a little more aware of things, and I don't have quite the energy that I used to have, and so occasionally, you know, I get on this thing where, man, every day, everything I do takes more energy than anybody else doing it. But you can't
Right.
dwell on that, you know. In most days, you know, and I tell my wife, I say, you know, most days I handle it with grace. A couple days a year, I don't handle it so well with grace, and those couple days I just kind of power through, you know.
Right. Does spirituality play a part in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the earliest. It's funny to say this. The earliest kind of spiritual moment I remember is actually not at church or with a pastor. It was actually at my pediatrician's office. They had this uh, poster on the office wall, and it was a picture of like some angry looking little kid, and the caption on the picture was, "I know I'm somebody because God don't make no junk." And I don't know why, but as a, you know, as a 6-year-old kid or whatever, when I saw that and read that, you know, it always stuck with me. Like and me being, you know, who I was. You know, there were times when I realized I was different growing up, and you know, that this always kind of resonated with me, that, you know, I, and my mom always kind of preached that we're all here for a reason. You know, God puts us all here for a reason, and so I've always kind of had that belief in a higher purpose. You know.
And that's been a part of your life. That's been something that you've drawn strength from.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's something I I see God in silly little daily things. Like I don't believe in coincidences. You know, if something silly happens on a daily basis that makes my life easier, you know, I thank God for it. I don't see it as a coincidence. You know, I see it as, hey, I needed a little. Today was one of those days when I wasn't dealing with it with grace, and so that little
Uh-huh.
pick me up. You know, that was a little sign for me to suck it up and keep moving.
Right. I hear that. What I was also, oh, it just slipped my mind, something I wanted to ask you about. Oh yeah. How did your TEDx talk start? How did that come about?
Uh, I think I just saw it in the newspaper that I live in Harrisburg, and it was in Lancaster where they did the TEDx, and that's about 30 miles away. I think I just saw it in the newspaper that they were taking that they were going to do a TEDx, and I had been aware of TED Talks, and I hadn't actually been aware that they were kind of localizing them. The TEDx is more the little all the little towns and cities all do their own little TED Talks, and so I saw that
Right.
Lancaster was doing it, and they had kind of an open call. You could, they had an open casting call for speakers, so to speak, and you could send them. So I sent them, I think, one of my speaking demos that I had or my website at the time, and they, I think you actually went and I can't remember if you actually had to go and audition or if they just picked you from your
From
I
your
think they just
video?
I think they just picked you from the video that you sent. They asked you to send like a 5-minute video or whatever, and they picked you from that. And I actually had I had my motivational speaking to business together at the time, so I had a nice little professional 5-minute speaking demo that I sent them, and
Right.
they picked me to come and do it. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
there's
a remarkable, it's a beautiful talk.
yeah, that was actually probably the most challenging talk that I've done, because they have the whole purpose of TED is to give the talk of your life in 15 minutes or less. And so my speaking career had been based around doing assemblies at schools and doing professional conferences, and they're all 45 to 50-minute
Right.
talks. And
Right. Right.
it sounds weird to say, but doing 15 minutes was way harder than doing 50 or
Yes.
60.
Yeah. 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 I
Because,
totally.
well, and also, my presentation was kind of like my baby. I mean, I'd spent years working on it and crafting it, and so to cut half of it or more out, it was hard.
I wanted to also ask you anything about how did you meet your wife?
We met. Oh, it's a beautiful love story. We met in a bar in Harrisburg. But no, it's
Well
actually fun.
done.
It's the joke in that is that my wife doesn't drink, and I certainly don't drink like I used to anymore in college and stuff. But it was we were both kind of dragged along. It was a young professional or young attorney group meeting at a bar in Harrisburg, and we met there, and it was kind of funny. Like, we just became friends, and we were friends for a year or two before we started dating. We she played on a volleyball league. We did. You mentioned volleyball earlier. I think was one of
How do
my
you? Yeah.
activities.
I don't want to go back to how does Craig do stuff, but volleyball is done how?
Volleyball is just headshots off, bouncing around on the ground, hitting the ball off my head. It's not
Right.
pretty. It's not pretty. But yeah, so Christy just, we played in a bar league, bar association league, every summer, volleyball, and we just got to know each other over the course of a year or two, and friendship kind of just developed into something more. That picture, actually, that previous picture is actually taken in South Africa. That was our trip to South Africa.
Oh wow! What was that trip about?
That was a swim. I've actually done it twice. It's the Midmar Mile, and it's you swim a mile in a lake in the middle of South Africa. And the first time I went, I just did the mile, and they have, you can do 8 miles. You can do 4 miles. They do different heats, and you do 4 miles one day. You swim a mile, and you take like a 15-minute break. Then you do another mile. You do that 4 times on Saturday, and you do that 4 times on Sunday. So I did that like 4 years ago. I went back. The first time we went was about 7 or 8 years ago, and then I
Right.
went back. We went back 4 years ago, and I did the 8 miles over the course of 2 days. You raise funds for the charity. I raised funds for the Pink Drive in South Africa, which is South Africa's breast awareness. Oh yeah, there we are in South Africa with the director of the Midmar Mile. Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Yeah,
What's that
there we
shot?
are. There we are making spaghetti in our apartment.
Amazing. So, is there any part of your speech that you think, like I said, for this tough year that we're all facing, that you'd like to share with us before we close it out?
Uh, you know, I think we already have covered that, a lot. Just keep doing what we do. My wife is a big Bon Jovi fan, and he's got a song out that's about this pandemic, and the refrain is just do what you do what you can. If you can't do what you do, then do what you can, and just keep doing what we keep. Know that this will pass. It's not going to be forever, and we just keep doing what we do. And I mean, I always talk about not letting moments define us. Let us define our moments.
Well, you're an amazing person, and you've certainly, I mean, you've done that with your life. I've been thinking about you over the past couple of days. I've found it incredibly inspiring, and I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed chatting with you.
Okay, have a great night, and a lot of blessings to you and your new expanded family.
Thank you so much. You same to you.
Okay, have a good night. That was amazing. Craig is an amazingly inspiring person. Go to his website, craigdietz.com. I think it's there it is, CraigDietz speaks.com. And you can see his TED Talk, and you can see the ESPN piece that we spoke about. The grit, the determination, the faith in oneself. I thought that phrase that he said about the poster that he saw, God doesn't make any garbage. That's such a crucial thing for us to focus on our own identities and in our own lives, especially now when we're getting stuff thrown at us that we didn't expect. But we're not garbage, and we can respond like elevated human beings who can rise above the situation. And like Craig said, we can define the situation and not let the situation define us. Before we leave, I'd like to mention again the AISH Gala, the AISHNYGala.com, if we can bring that up again, with keynote speaker, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, and our other honorees, including entertainment from Meeson Black, and also an illusionist, October 28th, AISHNYGala.com. Please go to the website, find out about all the great stuff that AISH New York is doing. We can't wait to see everybody back next week at Thursday night for Thursday Night Live. We'll let you know as soon as we can about what our next show coming up is. And if you have a difficult moment this week, think about Craig, think about his incredible determination, think about his incredible family and how they were determined to give him the most amount of independence and freedom that he could have in his life, and how inspiring his story is. Okay, everybody. Good night from AISH New York.